I have been getting, ever since I first got published with the Launch Trust, I think one of my very first emails was someone saying, when are you coming to Texas? And so people have been asking for a long time, and this is one of the dates on the tour that tour had not scheduled before, and I said, I need to go to Texas. Those people have guns and they will find me if I go. So I am here because you guys emailed me a whole lot. And, you know, my publicist said, well, we don't usually send authors to Texas. And I said, you're sending us. So here we are. What we're going to do today is I'm going to talk for a few minutes about, well, how I ended up here. I'm going to answer the first few times I did signings on this tour, I didn't do this part. But yet every time we went to the Q&A, someone right at the front asked the question, worded very nicely, why you? They're saying, how did you get chosen? What was the process? So I will talk about that so that you know, so that since everyone asked that. And then actually, we have Harriet with us. I don't know if you guys realize how special this is.
Yes.
She's only coming to about 6 of the dates, so of their 26. So you get Harriet. So she is going to do a reading for us from the book.
Great.
And then we will do a Q&A for about 15, 20 minutes. And then after that, I will give some announcements, so don't jump up out of your chairs right after that because there's some boring stuff that has to come next, okay? And then we'll get to the signing. We will sign everyone's books. We'll stay here till your books are all signed, so don't worry about that. So, part number 1. Oh, did you want to say something here? No. Oh, okay. You just look like you're reaching. We only have one mic here, so, you know, just throw something at me if you want to say something.
I was telling Brandon this morning, in fact, that there's an unpublished Robert Jordan, a very early work, and you'll love the first line. I never meant to leave Texas.
Yes, the very little known Robert Jordan Western, one of the early ones. No, he wrote a Western. He loved the Westerns. And he started writing one before he moved on to his historicals. That was before he did fantasy, so I've gotten to hear all about it. You guys don't get to. So we authors all have unpublished trunk novels, our practice novels, and you really don't want to see them. I promise you, you really don't. But it has a delightful first line. So, why me? How did I get here? Well, I know a lot of you follow my website and things like that, and so you kind of know basically how. But I figured it'd be nice of you to hear straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak, the process of events that led to me standing here before you at this lectern. And it's called a lectern. My editor insists that I cannot use the word podium for something like this unless I'm standing on top of it, because apparently the word podium is to stand or something like that. We had a big fight over this in the Mistborn books. So now I always use the word lectern. Never fight with an editor over proper English usage when they have Latin on their side. So how did I end up here at this lectern? My experience with the Wheel of Time dates back to 1990. Fall of 1990 when the first book was released in paperback. Anyone else see it right then? Some long-timers? Yeah. I saw Eye of the World. What happened is I shopped at my little corner bookstore in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I went in every week to see what was new. I like to consider myself at that point an expert in the fantasy genre, knew all of the authors and things, something you can only really do when you're in high school and you don't have anything else to do with your life. Back when I could keep track of everything that was being published. And I walked in the door and I turned and looked at the new release bay, and there in the new release bay was a very big book. I liked very big books for a couple of reasons. The first of which being, I was rather poor and they had a nice dollar to page length ratio. My high school economics teacher would have been proud of me. But the real reason was I liked to really dig into books. I liked to sink my teeth into them, and if I found one that I really liked, I wanted to be able to spend a lot of time in that world. Fantasy, it can be hard to get into a fantasy book, even for someone who loves the genre. It's work to learn all the names and the places and all these things. And once I did that, I wanted to be there for a while. Particularly if I found a book I loved. If I found length is not an indication of quality, but a good book that is long always trumps a good book that is short, in my opinion. As you might be able to tell from the way I write my books. So I picked up this book, and it really was, this isn't just hyperbole, it was the best fantasy book I had ever read. I loved this book. There was a depth to it and a level to the characterization that I had not read in other fantasy books. A lot of fantasy at that time, bless their hearts, they were doing very good work, but a lot of them were kind of retreading Tolkien. And this burst right out and became its own thing, and I loved this book. And I can remember, the Eye of the World hardcover never came to Lincoln. Apparently there was one, but they didn't make its way to my little corner of the world. And so when Great Hunt came out and we got a trade paperback into the little bookstore, I said, ooh, this means that other people have read this book that I found, and they liked it too, because now obviously the author has graduated to trade paperbacks. And then the third one came out in hardcover. And I was able to say, I knew him back when. I started reading right when the first one came out, and I felt very proud of myself for having picked the author that was going to get big. And lo and behold, Harriet's told me right around that time is when the books really took off. Right around Dragon Reborn, the Shadow Rising era. And like many of you, I would assume, I read through the entire series when a new book came out. That was actually quite easy when there were 3 or 4 in the series. It became much more of a Herculean feat when things like Crossroads of Twilight were coming out. And there are a few rereads that I just, I was in college and things and didn't have time to do, so I could only read like the previous one and the new one and things like that. But by the time Knife of Dreams was done, I had read Eye of the World about 8 times. So I was a pretty serious fan. There are bigger fans out there. There are people who could talk in the old tongue and can quote lines, and I've never been good at that, but I can promise you I was, my very first day in 1994 on the internet, the very first place that I went was the Usenet group for The Wheel of Time. They told me, oh, people talk about stuff on the internet. I didn't know what the internet was. I had no idea. I was in a class where they were trying to teach us about this, and they said, yeah, they talk about all sorts of things. And so I said, do they talk about Robert Jordan? And lo and behold, they did. A lot. So, I went to college. Freshman year in college, I was a biochemistry major. When you declare as a biochemist your freshman year, they like to see if you really want to be one or if you just wrote that down, and they put you in honors chemistry and honors calculus. This was not a good place for me. I love the concepts in sciences, but yeah, I had decided I wanted to be a writer long before that, and so after running smack face into honors chemistry, I changed to English. Started writing books and started writing epic fantasy. Decided this was really what I wanted to do, and the place I wanted to be was Tor Books. In fact, I don't know if any of you guys ever did this when you were kids. In high school, they make you write down a goals sheet, things you want to accomplish in your life. One of the things on my goals sheet was to publish a book with Tor Books, because that's where the Wheel of Time was, and I figured that's the pinnacle of any sort of publishing that someone can accomplish, is to be with Tor Books. I won't tell you the other things on that list because they were dumb. That one at least was not. And I spent many years trying to get published, and I hunted and chased and found the names of every tour editor I could and stalked them just a little bit at conventions and things, and eventually managed to get an editor at Tor to read one of my books